He might be the most famous Viking who ever lived, but did he actually exist? In 845 AD, a fleet of 120 Viking longships sailed up the Seine River toward Paris. The Frankish king Charles the Bald watched in horror. Leading the fleet was a man the monks called Ragnar. This Ragnar demanded 7,000 pounds of silver to leave. Charles paid it, the Vikings left. But who was this Ragnar, and was he the same man the sagas call Ragnar Lothbrok? Here's the problem. There is no single historical source that describes one man named Ragnar Lothbrok doing all the things the legends say. Instead, there are at least 3 different Vikings whose stories got merged into one. The first candidate is Ragnar, the Viking who raided Paris in 845. He's mentioned in Frankish chronicles. He was likely a Danish chieftain, possibly King Horik's brother or relative. He may have died of plague shortly after the Paris raid. The second candidate is Reginheri, a name that sounds suspiciously like Ragnar. He appears in a single Frankish source from the 840s. Some historians believe he's the real seed of the legend. The third candidate comes from the Norse sagas themselves. Ragnar Lothbrok, Ragnar Shaggy Breeches, a legendary king of Denmark and Sweden, who reportedly killed a giant serpent while wearing hairy trousers to protect himself from its venom. The name Lothbrok literally means hairy breeches, or shaggy trousers in Old Norse. It was likely a nickname, not a surname. And that serpent story? It's almost certainly mythological. But here's where it gets really interesting. According to the sagas, Ragnar had 5 famous sons. And these sons, they're definitely real. Every single one of them appears in verified historical records. Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Halfdan Ragnarsson, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, Ubbo. These 5 men conquered kingdoms across Europe, and every single one claimed Ragnar as their father. The most famous son was Ivar the Boneless. Nobody knows why he was called that. Some say he had a bone disease. Others say he was incredibly flexible, like a contortionist. He was the mastermind behind the Great Heathen Army. In 865, the Great Heathen Army, possibly the largest Viking force ever assembled, landed in East Anglia. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle says they came for one reason: revenge for their father Ragnar's death. So how did Ragnar supposedly die? According to the sagas, he was captured by King Aelle of Northumbria and thrown into a pit of venomous snakes. As the snakes bit him, he reportedly said, "How the little pigs would squeal if they knew the situation of the old boar." The little pigs were his sons, and the message was clear: they would come for revenge. The snake pit story is almost certainly fictional, but the revenge, that was very, very real. When the Great Heathen Army reached Northumbria, they captured King Aelle. According to the sagas, they performed the blood eagle on him, a ritual execution so brutal that historians still debate whether it actually happened. Bjorn Ironside took a completely different path. While his brothers invaded England, Bjorn sailed south through the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean. He raided North Africa, southern France, and Italy. The most outrageous story about Bjorn: he supposedly tricked his way into the Italian city of Luna by pretending to be dead. His men told the city he was a dead Viking chief who'd converted to Christianity and wanted a Christian burial inside the city walls. Bar gates opened, they carried the coffin inside. And then Bjorn jumped out, sword in hand, and his men stormed the city. The trick worked perfectly. Some historians believe this story later inspired the legend of the Trojan horse, in reverse. Meanwhile, Sigurd Snake in the Eye got his name from a birthmark in his eye that supposedly looked like a serpent biting its own tail, the Ouroboros. He became king of Denmark and Zealand. Halfdan Ragnarsson conquered Northumbria and became its ruler. He divided the conquered land among his warriors, creating what historians call the Danelaw. This Viking territory covered nearly half of England. So here's the real question. If the sons were real, was the father real too? Some historians say yes. There was probably a powerful Danish chieftain named Ragnar who lived in the early 800s. His deeds were real, but they got exaggerated over centuries of oral storytelling. Others say Ragnar was a composite, a fictional character built from the deeds of several real Vikings. The name became a brand. Every Viking who wanted legitimacy claimed to be related to Ragnar. The Ragnar legend appears in at least 6 different medieval sources, from Denmark, Norway, Iceland, England, France, and Ireland. No other Viking has that kind of coverage. Something real is behind the myth. What we know for certain is this. A Viking leader raided Paris in 845. He had sons who became some of the most powerful rulers in Europe. Those sons launched the largest Viking invasion in history to avenge his death. The great heathen army didn't just raid England, it changed it forever. Before the Vikings, England was 7 separate kingdoms. After the Viking Wars, it unified into one, because it had to survive. And it was Alfred the Great, the only English king ever called the Great, who united them. Without the sons of Ragnar forcing his hand, there might never have been an England at all. Ragnar's legacy echoes through 1,000 years of history. His sons shaped the borders of modern Europe. The Danelaw gave England its northern dialect. Viking DNA still runs through millions of people in Britain, Ireland, and Normandy. So was Ragnar Lothbrok real? The honest answer is probably, but not the way the legends tell it. There was a man. He was dangerous. He had sons who changed the world. And somewhere between history and myth, his story became immortal.